Thank you, and welcome to a very thankful Bladtcast. As always, I am the Blatt of the cast, Christian Blatt, at Christian DMZ, Twitter, Instagram, and you know him, you love him, and if you really know him, you really love him. The one and only Mr. William J. Starling at Will Starling _.
Some people might argue that if you know me better, you like me less. I think I'm best kept at Instagram pictures of myself and not.
Well, the last time we did a show with Zia, I said, you know her, you love her, but if you really know her, there's no way you could possibly love her. So I'm basically doing the reverse for you because, and I, my wife agreed with this. I said years ago, I'm really like beer. I'm an acquired taste. You'll get used to me, and then eventually you're like, oh, I kind of like that. But right away, the first time you taste beer as a kid, whew, yuck. That's how I feel about it. And joining us is Kaitlin Cornell. This is not your first appearance on the Bladtcast.
No.
But this is the first time you're recording something specifically for the Bladtcast because, Will, you understand that for the Bladtcast, it's a lot of reduce, recycle, reuse. Any content that I do for other shows that I feel like can be crammed into a Bladtcast episode, keeping you and Jeff from having to record with me for another week. I just go ahead and toss it up there. And that's how you get like a 2 hour and 51-minute episode about Eternals. Just stuff like that. But Kaitlin,
wait, you did 2 hours and 51 minutes for Eternals?
It was like three shows that got edited down to It was three. It was 3 episodes with different people.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, I did an hour with Kate, and I believe that our pal
and
Eric Connor was on that one, and then I did one that I taped early with Jeff and Elena, who I went to a press screening of, and we recorded it so that it could be posted. And then it all ended up, and this is all just behind the scenes, making of the sausage. This is how it all comes together. But Kaitlin, welcome back to the Bladtcast, but really it's like your first official visit. I feel like we're honored, and I wanted
feel like
to start.
I was at the restaurant and now I'm sitting at the table.
Yeah,
not just
you were at the outdoor patio.
Yeah,
but now we've actually let you inside.
That's nice. Masks off.
Enjoy glass. Those of us in Los Angeles, which the 3 of us are all in the LA area, we're probably all familiar with Lowry's, the prime rib in Beverly Hills. I'm a big fan of making either my parents or my in-laws pay for a meal there. But during the pandemic, which we're still in, but their pandemic solution was that they opened what they called the Silver Car Dining Terrace. Now they serve your prime rib in this silver tray that gets wheeled around from table to table, and that's where the meat is. So they had the Silver Car Dining Terrace, and I would like to explain that the Silver Car Dining Terrace was a really nice way to say a bunch of tables in the parking lot, because that's what it was. And by the way, still there. I got some Lowry's prime rib to go for my mother-in-law's birthday.
I feel like that's me. I'm prime rib in a parking lot. That's nice.
No, you were prime rib in a parking lot. You were Silver Car Dining, but now you're inside, and not just inside. You're also like, let's visit. Let's go to the bar and then we'll go to the table. This isn't just sitting at a picnic table, smelling car exhaust.
So we're gonna smell car exhaust and meet prime rib and talk about Dune.
Yeah. Oh no, we're gonna talk about a lot of things, and that's where we're going. We have a great question in the chat. Ivan Soto, what exactly is this podcast about? Ivan Soto, the answer is yes. Yes, that's what this podcast is about.
How did you find this podcast if it isn't?
Well, Ivan Soto is a fan of some of our other content, particularly Marvel movie talk. He's also visited our Mandalorian after show, and Ivan Soto has the most interesting perspective in that he likes the Star Wars universe.
Okay.
He likes the animated series. He likes the Mandalorian. He has never seen the original trilogy and does not want to see the original trilogy.
Oh,
that's really weird and inappropriate. That's really
the reason being that Harrison Ford, I think, doesn't like those movies. So why should we like those movies? And Ivan Soto,
Harrison Ford doesn't like anything.
I mean, you know, Callista Flockhart, he likes Ally McBeal. So, you know, give him that. He likes
and he likes that magic guy. He likes David Blaine because he freaked him out one time.
he likes flying planes and having difficulty landing them, I think, is really what it is.
Yeah.
And also in the chat, Roz JD, I think not his real name. Is this live to tape content? Yes, it is. But we are here. We're going to have a conversation. This is our Thanksgiving special. And I wanted to do a little round of just talking about something that we're thankful about in 2021. And first thing that I thought of, Kate, first of all, I appreciate you being here. I'm thankful that I met you in 2021.
Woo!
Thanks to our pal Alexa, Happy Cappy. Alexa Cappiello, who, Will, I know you've met.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's a mutual friend of ours. And she brought you with her to talk about working on the set for WandaVision.
Yep.
And then, unlike Alexa, you actually enjoy the Marvel movies when you see them. So, as much as I love,
she's getting better.
As much as I love Alexa, it didn't go well the one time I had her on the Straight Marvel show. Because she talked about how she really only likes the first ones and doesn't like the sequels of most of them. And you can
I got her to watch Winter Soldier.
Yeah, which
she said that she liked it.
But
she said if most of the other Marvel movies were like that she would like them.
Yeah. Well, and look, she couldn't be more right about Thor 2: The Dark World. She could not be more right, you know? So, and also, by the way, Avengers 2: Age of Ultron, where they keep trying to, you know, it's like they keep trying to make fetch happen. They keep trying to make Age of Ultron happen. And
no, this is where we differ, because I've been on the Age of Ultron train for since it came out. And maybe it's because I have this weird crush on James Spader's voice, not James Spader, just his voice.
Interesting.
Yeah. Wow. I'm like a vocal slut. It's great. And I love that movie way more than I should.
Yeah.
And every time I walked out of the movie theater, I'm like, that was really great. I went in a completely different direction. And I felt like they kind of slapped me a little bit, like, hey, you don't want anything to change and you just want peace. And I'm like, that's true.
Well,
then everyone else was like, that movie sucked. And I'm like, did I just get traumatized by a movie? I feel like I have to hide myself.
Well, I think it's a self-esteem thing that you feel like you're not worthy of a good Quicksilver, that you actually need Aaron Johnson Quicksilver, and that's all you get.
No, but then they killed him and it was fine.
Yeah, that's true. That was fine.
Yeah. And they killed him in the best way possible.
The hail of gunfire.
Hail of gunfire. Saving a kid to give Hawkeye, to provide Hawkeye one last little thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
And it was one of Scarlet Witch's big defining moments. And you can't tell me that the death of Quicksilver, even though you didn't know him and he was sassy pants, didn't influence her in a good way. And that's one of the most beautiful moments when she takes out Ultron's heart and said, "You took everything from that's Scarlet Witch. That's where she becomes the hero that we know that she can be."
That's really her MO, is to let powerful beings know what they've taken from her and then threaten to destroy them.
I don't even know you.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And look, we're talking about what we're thankful for. Look at this. Ivan Soto. I'm thankful for In the Heights, an entire movie filled with Hispanics and Puerto Rican people. My people being included was incredible. cheesy. I know.
Not cheesy. Fucking
no,
great.
Look, this is not a podcast where it's going to be, that being happy about representation is going to be something that you're ridiculed for, especially not when Will's here.
There's
if Jeff
a shot
was here,
in
maybe.
Endgame where it was all the women walking toward camera. Was it cheesy? Yes. Did I love it? Yes. Did I want more of it? Absolutely.
Yeah. And I saw In the Heights. It was fun. I think that some of the history of it is problematic because when Lin-Manuel Miranda first wrote it, the first concession he made is that he got rid of one of the openly gay relationships that just felt like it didn't fit in the story anymore. And I guess that when you have any kind of representation, there's going to be other people that feel like, yeah, but we're also not represented in there. And I think it was like
Afro-Cuban,
there was, and I guess Washington Heights it didn't feel that it reflected it, but I don't know. As a white man, and there's another white man here on the panel, and I don't want to identify you, Kaitlin, but you are also white
chick.
We know about representation. No, but I mean, I'm making light of it, but obviously you can notice from movies in general that, it's a lot better than, even a decade ago in terms of,
But I understand wanting to point out that the dial hasn't turned that far. And
Sure.
in a movie that hung its coat on the coat rack of we have diversity now.
Yeah.
To not feel like it applied to you, even though it applied to a wide spread of the Latinx community. I understand why people were upset living there and going, wait, that doesn't represent the community that I see.
Yeah.
But there is a moment in the movie when they talk about that Washington Heights is always changing, when the father, played by, oh God.
Is that Jimmy Smits?
Jimmy Smits' character, yeah. When he was like, the car company that I bought, it used to be called like Flanagan's or something like that, because this was mostly Irish. And now it's mostly us. And it's like, this community will always be changing, was kind of like what I took from that moment.
Yeah, so, which that example shows that some areas will always be places that my grandfather would have locked the doors when he drove through. And if it was Irish, it would have been the same feeling.
Yeah.
He would have felt that way. It's like, this is an Irish neighborhood. Basically like, it's always different. And I'm making a joke because my grandfather never would have driven in New York City under any circumstances. He would have stayed in New Jersey like he did. Yeah. But so let's see. I talked about being, I was, you want to talk about cheesy? I said what I'm thankful for apparently is you. Kate, is there something that you would like to share with the class that you're thankful for at this moment?
Well, I feel like a dick if I don't say I'm thankful for Christian Blatt now.
That was the right answer.
I win the podcast.
I don't know that you've gotten the bell before, because usually I don't bring the bell out on the other shows. Yeah. I'll let you think about a real answer, but we'll take that as a first one. Will, we know you're thankful for me, but is there anything else?
9 p.m. podcasts. I like that. Like as time has gone on, we've just like, Jeff is on the East Coast. Like we really just podcast when we can make it happen. What am I thankful for? I don't know.
I know something that you should be thankful for, and
I'm recently
on social media.
I'm recently married, so I'm thankful for my spouse.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that. I just met you.
Wonderful. What's that?
I just met you. I didn't even know that, and I'm already happy for you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, she's a really great person.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
It feels like
I have not met her.
You haven't?
No, we talked about this.
God, how much life has happened during
because it was like right, like I had a very small window before pandemic was in full swing.
Yeah,
and now she's back east.
Okay, well, look at that. 2 years goes by so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you know what? I'm thankful for Charles, Chuck the pup, my dog, Charlie. He's such a great dog. We went to Big Bear this weekend with some friends, and I went on the trails. Never taken him off leash before. It's perfect. Just ran up ahead, scouted, came back, collected everybody. Runs up ahead, scouts, comes back, collects everybody. He's a great guy. Very reliable.
Reliable pups.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's hear it for reliable pups. And by the way, here's the thing about 9 p.m. Bladtcast, and you can see it creeping into the frame. Will, I'm going to be thankful for the Figueroa Mountains Danish Red Lager. Oh. This is from up in Solvang, California, the Danish town.
Love Solvang.
Yeah, love Solvang.
Those are my people. And
I had I've taken a long hiatus from alcohol, but I miss beer, and I have an inside joke with a friend in a script we wrote about Old Milwaukee. So I bought non-alcoholic Old Milwaukee. It's really not very good, but it's something, I have that and a warm LaCroix.
I was just talking to somebody about older people tend to still drink coffee, but they drink decaf. And I was just like, man, you must love coffee if you're having decaf Sanka at 6:30 in the morning and you're 75 years old. And you just love beer so much that you're like, yeah, non-alcoholic Old Milwaukee.
It's hard to not drink beer. It's hard to not drink, period. But the hand to mouth old habit of having something, at all times, it's a challenge. So I've drank my consumption of coffee and Diet Coke has gone up exponentially
because you're not drinking alcohol.
Yes. Yeah. But you know what? I haven't been hungover in so long now. It's amazing. It feels so good.
I wonder what the difference would be if you showed up in the middle of our Oscars special, having drank too much Diet Coke or drank too much coffee, as opposed to several years ago when you showed up in the middle of our Oscar special, having drank way too much alcohol.
I was so hammered. Yeah, I definitely should not have driven to that recording of that podcast, but I did.
Yeah, I thought about that after the fact.
Yeah, but it was okay. It was okay. But you know what? You only get so many free passes, and I think I really overextended my limit. And it's time to hang it up a little bit.
That and the trip to the Jack in the Box where you scraped the side of your car.
That was many years ago. Yeah.
I know. I'm just saying. I've known you long enough that I know.
I do a lot of stupid things when I get drunk, like hitchhike and.
Oh no.
What else have I done? It goes on. It goes on.
Yeah, I bet it does.
I rode a Lime scooter over the Cahuenga Pass because I didn't want to pay a bunch of money for a lift. It was great. It only cost me $7.
As we're talking, I realized I believe I've known you for 10 years now, Will. I think I met you in 2011, right?
No, November 2010.
Okay. Oh, so I've known you 11 years.
11 years. Yeah, I started on Dennis's show right before. Yeah.
Okay.
20.
I thought you started in late 2011, but look at that. So that's an incredibly long amount of time.
It is. God.
And
that time goes by very quickly.
Yeah. And one day, Kate, I can know you for 11 years, and I'll remember the 2 or 3 things you'd like to forget, and I'll bring them up at an inconvenient moment, and then
I'll replay this podcast where you're like, I'm thankful for you, because 10 years later you might not be. So that's great.
Well, yeah. Let's be honest. What will any of us be thankful for 10 years from now? I will tell you another thing, which will get us to our main topic, which was where I wanted to start with, was the idea of something that I was thinking about. There's a lot to be thankful about late 2021 versus late 2020. And one of them, I am thankful for the option to do one of my favorite activities, which is not drink the Danish Red, but I do enjoy it. But it's the ease with which we can go to the movies again and make sort of the snap decision. Oh, I'm going to go see this movie tonight. And, things that I think even a few months ago, I would have been like, I'll probably just wait for that. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Now I'll go. And Kate, we've talked about this. You have the distinction of having accompanied me to my first movie back inside a theater since Invisible Man in late February of 2020.
Jeez, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I wanted it to be the Cats live action movie. I would have liked the idea.
Right? That was slap.
No, I still haven't seen the butthole cut, but I'm really hoping for it.
If you have a cat, you see the butthole cut every day.
Yeah, and I haven't had a cat in a while, but I have, in many times. There've been many butthole cuts around, and boy, do I miss Jeff right now. Will, with this part of the conversation, and yeah, Ivan Soto does mention I actually did miss going to the movie theaters, and there was a little while, when it was like, oh, come see Back to the Future inside the movie theater for $5. I'm like, nah, I'm okay. When new movies started coming out again, and then it got to the point where the press screening for Black Widow was the first movie I saw inside a theater in, like, I don't know what it was, like 13 months. And when our friend Jeff was unable to accompany me, Kaitlin was my second call. And she met me there. And then, interestingly enough, that was the day we met.
Yeah.
In person.
We've been doing podcasts, Will, for like, I don't know, 7 months at that point.
Yeah.
Because I just kept doing Marvel movie talk and all that stuff. And I never met him. And I'd realized it when we sat down because I was used to seeing his face. And oh, it's so good to see you. And I sat down. I'm like, wait, we just met.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to see you again. What?
Yeah. What were you going to say?
Person, right?
Yeah, there's a first time in person.
Yeah. And I'm just saying, it's much better to interact with you in person. It's just it's not the same doing it virtually.
Yeah,
there's something about Christian Blatt that.
The interesting thing was that she just beat me to it. I was about to turn to her, but she said it to me first. She said, "Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy. So here's my number. Call me, maybe." And that, of course, is
what I'm thankful for this year.
Carly Rae Jepsen.
Yeah. Carly Rae Jepsen.
Also, the Larry O'Connor theme song.
I forgot about that.
I feel like it's like what you did there is like, I'm going to put that on my wall. It's like going to be that like Office quote where it's like, you miss 100% of the chances you don't take Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott. It's going to be like, hey, I just met you. Carly Rae Jepsen, Christian Blatt.
Yeah. I mean, basically, I think that's, I've co-opted that. And look, it's fun. Like, there are movies that I could have watched at home. Will and I saw The Suicide Squad in the theater because.
Oh, cool.
What
did you guys think about that? Because I sat down, I saw that movie in IMAX.
Okay.
And it wasn't my first IMAX back, but I turned to my friend. And like, for some reason, I forgot that it was James Gunn. And for some reason, I forgot which movie I was seeing. And I looked at my friend. I'm like, this is rated R, isn't it? And he's like, yep. And I'm like, it's going to be super bloody, isn't it? And he's like, yep. And I'm like, fuck, I don't like bloody things. I am the worst when it comes to like.
Even when it's like silly comical blood like that?
That ended up being okay. But there were moments in the beginning sequence where I'm just like, oh my God, especially when like the bird like came and like took
yeah,
very violent.
My wife is
graphic ass shit in there, and I'm just like, my
wife is the same way. Yeah,
than the Battle of Winterfell, but man, it's a lot, guys.
Yeah, my wife doesn't like to on-screen violence. She knew that she didn't want to watch Squid Game. I did the same thing. I know it's good, guys, and it's exactly like that episode of Doctor Who, and no one's talking about the fact that it's just another Doctor Who episode, but it's okay. Not everyone watched Doctor Who. There's an episode of Doctor Who where they go into like deadly video games or deadly like game shows, and one of them is like a version of like that's an Eccleston one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like where he goes back and it's like there's one where it's like the weakest link. Then they get shot.
Yeah. And he ends up like in the Big Brother house at one point.
Yeah.
That one has
how can you tell me that's not Squid Game?
Isn't Simon Pegg in that?
Probably. I don't know.
Yeah, he's like the controller of the TV network.
He's painted his skin as even more white than his already white.
Somehow he found a way to do
it. It went from white to white.
Yeah.
White.
No,
yeah.
but so I watched the first Squid Game and I had decided like, oh yeah, my wife can't watch this, and she heard it from upstairs and she's like, oh yeah, no, I could tell. She just heard too many gunshots. Yeah. And she's like, yeah, I won't enjoy that.
Because the first episode is the big doll that turns. Yeah.
So, and she was just like, yeah, I don't need to see that.
I'm okay.
So
I have not watched it yet. It's on my list.
It's okay. I have not spoiled. I have not spoiled it. I have just said there have been some gunshots, and
all I know is that I hope that there is a squid.
Yep.
And there's a game.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
And a squid playing a game.
The squid playing a game. I mean,
yeah, it's actually Zoidberg from Futurama, and he's playing poker the entire time. So enjoy. Really yeah, I hope I didn't ruin it for you.
I thought you were the robot.
So yeah, in any case, there are a couple instances of so for me, like going back to the movies was a lot of like seeing big stuff. So Will and we went to see the Suicide Squad on the big screen back when you still lived in the Valley. That was still convenient. But and I'll see the big movies. I saw Ghostbusters Afterlife in IMAX.
I still haven't,
because the screening was in IMAX, and so I didn't have a choice. But still, and I think that so there's a lot of that. But also, like, just going to see smaller movies. Like I went to Vegas a few weeks ago and I met up with my dad. And I could have done what I would have done as a younger man and like, great, I'm going to go play some slots and go sit down and maybe play roulette. And instead I went to the movies upstairs in the casino I was in, the Orleans. And I saw the new Wes Anderson movie, The French Dispatch. And I'm a big Wes Anderson apologist. So even movies that I don't know are necessarily good, I usually tend to like. And I thought that this was good. It's like a collection of like 3 stories. One of them is stronger than the others, but I think it all worked for me and it was fun. But that's definitely, I think, you could have waited for that to be streaming or whatever. And a movie that I believe both of you liked more than I did is Last Night in Soho.
Oh
yeah,
they're a great movie.
Will, are you? Yes.
Yeah, I think I'm in the like, I really enjoyed that, but I don't think I'm in the like, fuck, that movie was fucking off the charts, amazing.
Were you off? You thought it was off the chain?
I thought it was for shiz. It was the shit. Yeah. It was such a dope movie.
I will let you rave about it. I will just qualify. My comments are, I thought the entire movie looked beautiful. It was really well shot. Just incredible music. Great. I thought that it was a great usage of music and then all the sound. When the theater I went to, they told you that like the first 20 minutes, the sound is like in mono or something. And then there's sort of like a, Wizard of Oz moment, like when she walks through, and that, so it's like, it's done intentionally.
Yeah.
So, and I think that is great to have that level of, using the technology, using the sound, using all of our senses. And I think story-wise, I was really into it for 2/3 of it. And then just for me personally,
I know the moment that you dropped out.
Yeah. And I think that it's not a big movie, so I think we can talk about it without spoiling it really. But it just all fell apart for me really like the last 10, 15 minutes. And
when you realized who it was.
I didn't hate it. But I was like, I was like, it could have gone other ways that I think I would have been happier with.
Like what?
I don't know how much I want to get into what it was, because one day people will see this movie. But I think I'm
curious.
Because it comes off more like a B horror movie because of the way that it went. And it could have been, I think,
it's by design.
Yeah. No, I know.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Will. Go ahead.
Homage to old, 60s British, I mean, like, format-wise, and that's one of those things where I was like, it took me a minute to realize, like, what he was doing. Now, I'm not that familiar with old British cinema, but, like, enough as far as some tropes go and some old movies I've seen with, like, even before, like Laird Krieger and some old horror kind of British bullshit like that. I guess like maybe halfway through I was like, oh, okay. Like I kind of see what's happening. So then when it started to pivot, I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I kept waiting and like having guesses of like what was going to happen. So I inherently didn't think for the longest time until really towards the end that it what the end was what it was going to be, because I was sort of trying to piece it together like it was kind of a modern thing. And so when it was a sort of, to most people, if you know that, like an unsurprising twist, for me it was surprising just because I thought it was going in a more modern direction for the longest time.
So to answer the question, Ivan had a question about if it's a Sixth Sense like movie, and it kind of is and it kind of isn't.
Yeah. So
it's basically the story of a young girl who feels like an outsider. She's obsessed with the 60s. And her mom kind of instilled this and her grandma instilled this love of like the 60s and 60s music and 60s fashion. And she ends up getting into fashion school in London. And so she goes to London and is a complete outsider. She does not fit in with any of the girls there, and any of the people there, except for this one weird stalker guy. But they make it clear very early on that she can see the ghost of her mom. And she can see ghosts, and her grandma's worried about her in the big city, that something would happen to her. And so to get away from these crazy girls, she ends up renting her own apartment, where she starts to connect with the ghost of a woman who died in that room. And she dreams this other woman's life, and it starts to kind of connect with her own. So that's the basic premise of Last Night in Soho.
Yeah, and I think it's important for a movie that probably most people haven't. You're gonna have plenty of people who have probably not even heard of it, and I think that Anna Taylor-Joy being the other woman, the other side of the equation, I think it's great to see her. And I think that it's interesting because when you have somebody that has an ability like, oh, I'm like living this thing that happened, and you always wonder like, oh, is it real? But then oh, but she has like a hickey from that night in Soho. So I think it's sort of like mysterious, a little bit explored. And I think, stylistically, like I did like it.
Ghosts can interact with her very early on. So when they do start messing with her, it's like, oh no, this could be real. This could be real danger, not just imaginary danger. So that when she reacts back at them, it's terrifying, not only for her, but the consequences. And the last time everyone has seen Thomasin McKenzie was in Jojo Rabbit. She was the girl in Jojo Rabbit.
And that's what I was going to say. M. Night Shyamalan's Old, which I might have been the only person to see that movie.
You were the only person to see that movie.
I actually didn't mind it. It wasn't terrible.
So let's put it on the M. Night scale. Is it closer to The Village? Or
it's sort of like
Unbreakable.
I think it's closer to The Village, where it's like most of it's actually pretty good.
Okay.
And then the last like little bit, you're like, okay. But I
here's where I differ from, and I also I'm gonna say, I hate being the person, but I'm the only woman on the panel.
It's fair.
For those who haven't seen the movie, the bad guy, the antagonist of the film, is not a person, it is an idea. So go into the movie knowing that it is the antagonist of the film is the male gaze, especially the male gaze of the 60s, this kind of patriarchal, you'll see it throughout as a running theme. And even when she starts seeing the ghosts, the men are faceless and they are scary. And for me, they were terrifying because that's what I see when I'm walking down the street and I kind of like catch what a guy kind of looks like and then put my head down a little bit. It's like a blur of men that you kind of don't really want to interact with, but force themselves to interact with you. Right. And even from the cab driver saying stuff like, a little too close of like, where are you staying? I'll stay out for you. And will you design something for me? And like, oh, your skirt's really short. Like, even like those little comments like start to be a little creepy and then it gets terrifying. And so it's like allowing men to see this movie about how women are, how a creeped out woman can become a terrified woman, I thought was really important, and what the ghosts physically represented to that. And so having the twist at the end, for me, that was the only solution.
Right.
That was the only thing. And to have it that it wasn't, the ghost wasn't what I thought it was, and the haunting wasn't what I thought it was actually for me the best ending. And it talks about empowerment in a different way, and in a scary way, and in a very complicated way. So without giving that away, I implore people who want to go see this movie, explore a movie you wouldn't normally go see. This isn't Avengers. This is a smaller Edgar Wright. He's a very smart filmmaker, and nothing is out of place in his movies. And he's very particular.
But Anna Taylor-Joy was in New Mutants, so if you and of course,
and she looks 20 years different now because that movie took fucking forever to
8 years. But of course, also Matt Smith is in this movie, and I think
just because people do nerd things does not make this a nerd movie.
No, but it's always worth letting people know who might be nerds that you can see nerd actors in a non-nerd setting.
That's true.
That's why
I feel like it's. Oh wow.
Go ahead, Will.
He's just nerdy in general. There's some nerdiness going on here. It's a big homage to this thing. I feel like it's kind of, it's a little nerdy in its own way, I don't know.
Well, because it's dealing with any kind of, even if it's like spiritual time travel, there is something. There's something mystical about it.
Or this like fantasizing of a bygone era,
right?
Or fantasizing about the '60s and how great they were, but how also not great they were.
Love of that type of movie. Are we spoiling this movie, or?
Well, I don't want to talk about what the twist in the ending is, but other than that,
not to.
Well, I feel like you could say anything apart from that. It's just because if somebody goes into it knowing that, I feel like it takes away. Sometimes saying things about a movie, it's not going to ruin things. But I feel like
an early on thing.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
But I thought that was like kind of like, this bothers me when people use mental illness as a plot device.
Sure.
Because her mother.
Yeah, I can see that.
The premise of the setup isn't just that she can see ghosts; it's that her mom was mentally unwell and then killed herself.
Yeah.
And she took her own life because she suffered from mental illness, and so they're using then her and her visions. Is she suffering from the same delusions that her mom is? Is it pushing her to the same thing? Is she mentally ill? And it turns out, no, some of these things that are happening really did happen. So there's a magical element to it that sort of apologizes for this, like, maybe she's a paranoid schizophrenic. Psych, it's ghosts. So you're like, okay, so we're the mental, so okay, so that's not important that we discuss that part of it thematically. Fine. They just kind of like leave it, but they use it to question her sanity, which is like kind of unfair. And it would have been, I think, better had they addressed that in a little bit more head-on way, as opposed to being able to use it for outsiders to be able to judge her and think she was crazy. It existed purely for that reason.
I get that. Okay. That's a good call.
Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely understand that criticism. And, I think that I think from the story standpoint, I did kind of like the mean girl aspect where they're like, and the other girl who's like, well, I had like an aunt who committed suicide, or I forgot exactly what she said.
Yeah, she's like the one-upmanship.
Yeah, I was just like, it's sort of like it's funny because that is kind of a true to life moment. Obviously, it's an extreme example, but it's like, oh yeah, well, I've got tragedy too. Okay.
Yeah. I call it, I actually have a term for it of my own because I've gotten into this conversation with people so many times. I call it measuring grievance dicks.
I like that.
Anytime someone's like says something bad happened to them, there's always somebody who's like, wow, my day was this. And it's like, my
boyfriend was so much worse. You have no idea.
Measuring grievance dicks. Okay, fine.
I know. I like it. But that's kind of what's interesting about being in a culture right now on Instagram where mental health is being put on display.
Mm-hmm.
And we're defining ourselves by trauma, but also going that trauma doesn't define me.
Yeah, it's weird because
I'm the victim of this, but I'm not a victim. And it's like, how do I move on from that? And I think this movie asks that question.
It is kind
but it's not an overt question, and it's not an overt question until you pick it up.
Right. Yeah, I mean, social media presently, it's sort of like people want to have their cake and eat it too, sort of element where it's like, I'm not fragile, I'm very strong until I decide to be the victim. And I'm not talking about like,
right,
people accusing people of like, oh, you're a triggered snowflake, because we all know that the people
are
the triggered snowflakes themselves. But it is a fine line that we're walking, where we're very progressive in some of these conversations about things like mental health, and then also it's like walking on eggshells sometimes, just because the conversations are brand new, and I think people are hoping that people like get it perfect right out of the gate, and it's like it's always messy, which is why that element to the movie like didn't ruin it for me. I was just kind of bummer, but it was like it didn't upend the whole movie.
No, and I think performance-wise, I think that Thomasin McKenzie was great, and I did have to look up after the movie. I'm like, oh, she was the girl in Jojo Rabbit, which she was also great in that. So I think it's a great opportunity for her to shine. And Anna Taylor-Joy, this was like one of like 5 projects she all did in the same there's like a 2-year span where she was just, she did Queen's Gambit and this, and I forget what else. She did like a bunch of stuff, and it all kind of came out around the same time. And yes, Will, I think that New Mutants was shot in 1865, and it took that long for it to come out.
It was called Ye Old Mutants at the time.
Ye Old.
Ye Old. It took so long to release, they just changed it to New Mutants.
They just had to change it to New Mutants.
Yeah, I have.
That's pretty funny.
Was that Will?
Well, here at the Bladtcast, and at Kate, I don't know how many episodes of the Bladtcast you've done.
Well, this is the first exclusive Bladtcast.
Over the years, we've had many different segments, and we wade into some inappropriate things for joke's sake. And I feel like, Christian, I have to share a Bladtcast appropriate story for you, but I risk it coming across as very gross, but I think it's funny. If I'm permitted this, the dude element.
Will you have the floor, please?
While watching Old, M. Night Shyamalan's recent film, Old, as it was melodied before. Thomasin McKenzie, I don't know, she's like 20 years old in that movie. She plays like the kids grow up, right? Because they're on a beach where they're there like over the course of an
afternoon.
An afternoon, yeah. And I was like, oh, I've never seen that actress before. Now that I'm like wading into this, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't tell this fucking story.
Are you feeling like, oh, I should have told this story when it was just 3 dudes?
No, because it's kind of funny. Okay. So they're all at a beach. And listen, the young, attractive actor, and I was like, oh, she's cute. She's cute. Everybody's hanging out at the beach. But I did notice that for her age, I was like, wow, this is a well-endowed individual.
Okay.
She's genetically gifted. I'm watching Last Night in Soho, and I'm like, where have I seen this person before? She looks familiar. There's a brief shot where she's changing in her hotel room, and you get a quick shot of her chest. And I was like, oh, she's from Old. I recognize her boobs because she had fantastic boobs. I feel so bad saying that because she's like pretty young. She's over 18, so it's technically fine.
Yeah, she's okay.
It makes me feel a little pervy, but I was just like, it was her boobs that instantaneously gave her away.
Well, that's the most Bladtcast thing you've said in a few years. I think that I think I'm glad you were willing to share that with us. That was
in a movie that is as we have now talked about the male gaze. Look at what I did.
I know. And I was just gonna say something
with me.
And Will, in many episodes, Will has been our resident feminist. Mostly because myself, Jeff, and even on shows that Zia was on, I mean, I think that Will would probably be, a little bit more sensitive to other women's feelings than Zia is. Will was always our resident feminist, and he would he would try and keep us in check.
You don't
have to the mantle so you can be.
I believe that it's okay to still believe that people are objectively attractive.
Yeah,
I think that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, I think so too.
I'm trying to frame it in as polite a way as I can, but I did feel a deep shame at being able to identify an actress by her boobs.
So. I'm so glad you were able to share that.
Did everyone see the trailer for Pam and Tommy that just came out?
No, but I was in that show, actually. I did a bit part for that.
Oh, nice. You should watch the trailer.
Okay.
Are you the stand-in for Tommy's?
No, I have no lines, but I do play a porn star. I do. I'm in a simulated.
By the way, is this not the first time you played a porn star, right?
No, this is the first time.
Oh, you were a stripper and something.
Yeah,
right?
I was a stripper twice.
All right.
Twice.
This conversation's fascinating.
It should be.
Yeah. Anyway.
You've also been a murder suspect.
Oh yeah, I shot an innocent man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that on? That was Criminal Minds. Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't mean to hijack this to make it about the male gaze, but it's
I mean, it already was. And
proving your point.
Honestly, it just proves the point. And I
bring
that up. I want everyone to see this right now.
Yeah, Ivan Soto says creepy conversation.
I think the creepier part about it is that I'm like, what's the politest, not creepy way I can say this? Made it more creepy.
No, it's so creepy.
If I just said it straight out, it would have been less creepy.
Let's circle back to old.
Would it have made a difference if I said it?
If you recognize an actress because of her boobs?
Yeah.
I mean,
is it less creepy when I do it?
I think
it probably is, right? It's probably less. I mean, regardless of your orientation, which is established now because you mentioned, you said you used the word boyfriend before, but regardless of your orientation, I think it would still be less creepy because, it could just, it'd just be like, oh, okay, I just noticed. But let's bring it back to old for a second because Ivan wants to know where's old in a scale from Sixth Sense to The Last Airbender.
Oh man, Last Airbender is genuinely one of the worst movies that's ever been made. And I'm kind of like I'm not an M. Night Shyamalan apologist. I just always wanted him to like have another hit. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I just really liked those first couple of movies, and I was like, man, I know what he's.
I thought that the Glass trilogy was okay. Split was good.
I enjoyed Split. I didn't see Glass.
And if you haven't seen Servant on Apple, you should watch the first episode of Servant.
I actually meant to watch that, but I got rid of Apple Plus.
So Servant is he kind of like not as a showrunner, but he spends the first episode setting the visual tone of the series.
Okay.
And then he gets to do the twist and then never does anything ever again. So then other people take on like the mantle that he set. So he's kind of like created this beast. He set the tone, did the twist, and then left it.
Huh.
So he didn't actually have to follow through. So it's actually like probably some of his best directing. If you want good M. Night Shyamalan, this is why he was such a good director.
Yeah. He directed the first episode.
Watch the first episode of Servant.
I do remember seeing the billboards and stuff for that. And I was like, oh, I should check that out. Because I also liked The Visit. Was that what it's called?
Yeah.
Found footage one, which I thought was surprisingly clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's very much in the vein of for people who it's like The Boy. It's in the visual. It's in the kind of like tone of The Boy, which is a horror movie.
Oh, the doll. The doll.
The doll.
Yes. Okay. With Rupert, the guy from Man in the High Castle, everyone says looks like me, or vice versa. When we work,
I don't know about that.
Rupert,
but Servant's great. It's on Apple. If you want a good M. Night Shyamalan thing.
On a scale of old Sixth Sense to Last Airbender, I guess
closer to Last Airbender,
but it's not that bad. Like Last Airbender
is it like right in the middle?
It's in the middle. Like it's
The Happening. Where is it in relation to The Happening?
It's better than The Happening.
Okay.
Yeah. If it's
I feel like people it until the end, until the twist happened.
Do you mean
but that's
old?
usually what happens? Yeah,
because I liked Unbreakable. I've told this story before on the podcast, but I don't think Kate's ever heard it. I thought Unbreakable was great. And then my friend and I, who we went to see it together, she and I laughed so hard that we couldn't breathe with they called me Mr. Glass, and I just thought that was such a shitty ending. But then they made it worse with the title card that was like he was sent to a home for criminally insane. It was just like it was good, and then it was cheese piled on top of cheese, and then there was like one other thing that it said, and it was just like I couldn't stop. So I can only think of that movie in like the last 30 seconds because I remember laughing at it. But I remember it being beautifully shot. There was a really cool like some shots like on a train like behind Bruce Willis. And it was like filmed like, you know, from the gap between and it was like, it looked great. I love superhero stories, obviously. And then it just like lost me in the last minute, and like literally the last minute.
Can we use that as a segue into another film that was so beautiful?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought it up. And we have previously on the Bladtcast.
The Bladtcast.
We have discussed the Dune, and when we say Dune, we're talking about Dune parentheses 2021, not Dune parentheses 1985, not the David Lynch Dune. So we're talking about
Villeneuve.
Yes,
Dune.
That's Dune.
Dune.
That's the one that we're talking about. And Kate, really the impetus for really wanting to have you on to talk about this, and Will, I have a general sense for how you felt about it.
Yeah.
When we talked about it on the Bladtcast previously, Jeff Z and I were all fairly positive. And look, Jeff had the benefit of he had just read the book. He had read the entire book like right before he saw it.
Also read it.
Okay. Well, I didn't. So I was like, yeah, I could see there were times where I'm like, oh boy, I feel like I could have read this book. But I forgot that you had said that you had just read the book. So you can expand as much as you want, but make sure you get to the overall summary that I thought was the perfect encapsulation for how someone could feel about this movie.
This movie was the most beautiful movie I wanted to shoot myself in.
I feel similar.
It was just like, I'll get to the main, the crux of why I'm here in a second. But this movie, okay. For those who don't know on the Bladtcast, and for Will, who just met me an hour ago, I want to be a writer and a director. Denis changed how I look at film with Arrival. Okay. I know he's a great technical filmmaker. There are a lot of great technical filmmakers, and I'm not taking that away from them. I work on film sets. I work in the industry. There are a ton of super talented, passionate people in this industry that are very good at what they do. And when it all syncs up, when props and visual effects and the visual effects that work inside a real image and you can't tell the difference, and you have the sand that's rippling like the ocean and it's like, holy moly. And then you have this like weird, like butthole worm that I'm like, what the shit? It's like, it's so great. And then you have this costume design and like everything lines up. The score lines up, except for this weird moment, which is bagpipes. And it's weird.
Oh,
but,
so we agree on the bagpipe.
Go with it. I'm on the train. I'm on the Dune train. I'm there with it. And everything lines up. And then I walked out of that movie and I was just so empty.
Yeah, I was so bored. Because
nothing served the story. Like, I was a little heartbroken because Dune is, I feel like we should not give it the leeway of saying it's unfilmable when you decide to film it. Okay. That's the challenge that you're taking.
Yeah.
When you say something it's like, oh, it's supposed to be unfilmable. And it's like, don't give them a pass. They tried to film this. Like,
many times.
Yeah. And for David Lynch, it was trying to tell too complicated of a story, at least for Villeneuve. It's like, oh yeah, I can't tackle this. And this has to be like, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours. At least there's that realization. I think David Lynch wanted to take his name off of his version. That's how he felt about the way it turned out. Yeah.
To answer Ivan's question, the books are good. The books serve a very specific purpose. It basically does a Messiah, a white Messiah story, and then kind of says the consequences of a white Messiah story in the 60s. And it does it with magic and intergalactic politics, and there's a political thriller in there. There's witches, and it's a hero's journey of a kid who's played by Timothée Chalamet, and kind of like being a little bit lost. But it was like, I felt like I couldn't say anything negative about such a beautiful movie, but it was like I felt like I was being masturbated on and then not allowed to feel anything.
Oh, it was totally one-sided. You got Louis C.K.
It was such a one-sided encounter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sticky now and I don't know what to do. And I guess you're rolling over and I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it was.
And literally that line, Will, is the only reason I'm on this podcast.
No, that is the reason you're on this episode in particular. That's the reason I conceived this idea, was because you said that and it made me laugh so hard. The idea that it was like the lights came up in the theater and it was like, you need to go home now.
Yes.
You don't get to stay for you don't get to stay
to leave.
You don't get to stay for breakfast in the morning.
No.
You have to go home now.
I have to work in the morning.
Yeah.
It's like
I got a really early day.
There's a couple of times Scorsese has done that where I'm just like,
yeah,
I don't appreciate that you think I have to watch this 4-hour movie.
Irishman.
I don't think that you get to tell me that, Marty.
No.
I would like a 2-hour version of this. I agree that you had just read the book, which is interesting. I have never seen a version of it, never read anything. All I knew was that it was like desert planet space movie. So I was like, cool.
A kid gets high off of space cocaine and has visions.
Right.
Well, hey, Star Wars is a desert planet space movie, so that probably would work, right?
Which was saved in editing. And it was made Star Wars was inspired by Dune. A lot of the fantasy genre has been inspired by this book, but I think they just didn't know what their story was. And to use a screenwriting term, great. There's a basic thing in screenwriting, which I wish Eric was here, which is you have like the A plot line, which is the story that you follow, and then the B plot line, and sometimes C's and D's, and keeps going on and on and on.
Sure, yeah.
And the B plot line kind of interacts and intercepts the A story and kind of acts as a little bit of a foil of like, hey, the B plot line's telling you what the A plot line should do. Hey.
So wait a minute. Are you saying that you felt that Dune didn't handle the GHIJK stories as well as they could have?
I'm thinking that they didn't even handle their A story well. Because if they didn't have it greenlit, but they ended it where they did, where it was a cliffhanger. And there's no way they weren't going to make a second one. There's no freaking way.
Well, it seems like that's the real story, is like the next one. Because I'm watching this as like a total outsider, like, okay, so what? And I wrote I think Instagram, I was like, man, this is the grittiest Jesus origin story I've ever seen. Like, I didn't know it was a Messiah thing. And I was like, oh, okay. It's a super Jesus thing. And,
and you were also like, wait, why is Zendaya on the poster?
Yeah, and Javier Bardem. Like, I was waiting for what I assumed was like the action part where he sides with the like rebels underground or whatever. Like, that's gonna be the fun. That's gonna be the cool part of Dune. And then it's like an hour and a half, 2 hours in. I keep checking my phone. I'm like, man, first of all, when does this shit be over?
And then the bagpipes happen, and I'm just like, okay, I'm awake now.
That was my takeaway tweet that Christian stole a joke from me, but it's okay.
I'll let you have your joke back and go ahead and share it.
Two things about the very distant future I'm very excited we still have. One, bagpipes. And two, people are still named Paul. Yeah. And I also love that in an intergalactic universe, there is a character named Duncan Idaho. I think Paul is way more like Duncan Idaho sounds like pew pew, Harrison Ford, Han Solo, but and Lady Jessica.
Will,
Paul over here.
I think that it's obviously an appropriate name because Will, as you and I have established our mutual appreciation, we know that Paul is the name of a star child.
That's true.
So it only makes sense. Paul also being the real birth name of the Space Ace and the Fox, by the way.
So you're saying that
3 of the 5 original members of Kiss were named Paul at some point. So clearly it belongs in sci-fi.
You're right. I forgot.
Will, for you, it was just ultimately you were bored, right? And I think you basically said that when Jeff and I were talking about it in more general terms.
Yeah.
But that's where what it came down to for you is that.
Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was trying to summarize your thought, and instead I'm like, why don't I just let you say it?
Don't wait for the translation.
Don't wait for the translation.
I agree that Denis Villeneuve, am I saying that right? Denis Villeneuve, is that how he says his name?
Yeah.
Love that guy. Like
Danny Villanova, I think.
Prisoners and Sicario, especially too. And then Arrival, really, I agree, like was the big thing that I was like, man, this is what a fucking masterclass in filmmaking all around. Like, yeah. But that's also just a really great script. And so then I saw the new Blade Runner and I was like, yeah, if anyone's going to do a Blade Runner, like what a great choice. And I was like, man, this movie's fucking boring shit. Why did they make this? Like, it's beautiful and the performances are great and the music's good. Same thing. And I was like, man, this movie sucks. And they cut to Jared Leto for like 45 minutes where it's like, the sinewy waterfall rains down its mercy upon those who... And I'm like, man, shut the fuck up. What are you even talking about? Like for 2.5 hours, this movie was just like, we're the Blade Runner sequel. And I was like, be fun then. Where's the fun part? So now I'm going into Dune like, okay, Denny, you kind of pulled the wool over my eyes a little bit. And then you showed me that Blade Runner movie. And I'm like, I really hope that there's at least some space battles and some fun stuff that's going to happen. And it was just people looking for cinnamon. And then fat Stellan Skarsgård, like in like oil, eating whatever the fuck. And apparently he can crawl on walls. And like everybody, the witches thing too. I was just like, it was beautiful.
Did anyone else scream in their minds, what's in the box?
Oh, that's a good.
Yeah.
Think about that, but that's true.
I
definitely wanted to know.
It's pain. And I was like, why don't you just stab his hand? Like, why do you have to have him put it in a box? It's another one of those things where like I was one of the very few people in the world who did not like Game of Thrones. But I conceded that I thought Game of Thrones, I must have been the exception, right? Everybody else liked it. I thought it was super fucking boring and all I wanted was wizards and dragons and spells. Because they promised me a fantasy show about dragons. And everyone was like, it's actually about politics. And I was like, well, then don't fucking tell me it's a fantasy show. So then I go to see Dune and I'm like, I want to see
a politics show with dragons.
I was like, I got to see Dune. And I'm like, I want lasers. I want spaceships. I want fights. I want space. And everyone's like, well, it's actually about politics. And I was like, I'm going to fucking shoot myself. Now I have to sit here for 2.5 hours to see half of a story. No.
Don't I go to the movies to get away from politics? Isn't that the idea?
Yeah. And then it's like, and now I'm with the rebels. And I'm like, I don't even want to see the next one now. I'm so mad that I wasted all that time for a fucking backstory I could have got in 15 minutes.
Because Duncan Idaho won't be in it. And you know what I love about this comment from Ivan Soto is the way that I talk about Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, the incest show, right? You left out the incest and rape show. Because that's really what it is. And I didn't, and again, this is mostly for Kate. For people that have listened to or watched the Bladtcast, you know that I just didn't watch Game of Thrones because I don't like any of that stuff. I don't care about the dragons, and I don't. And usually to annoy people, I would usually say, no, I just don't like hobbits and shit. And I would just say that because it's not really. Yeah, I know that that's not what it is. But I was just like, nah,
speaking of that answers Ivan's question, which is what movies based on the books have actually worked. And I would say the Lord of the Rings worked, not the Hobbits. But I would say Lord of the Rings.
The Hobbits took like basically a pamphlet and turned it into like 9 hours of movie. But the Hobbit is the only
I
of
will say that
the
Lord
only
of the
one of the
Rings is
books
still
that I
one of the
actually
best
read.
films ever made.
What was that, Kate? I'm sorry.
Lord of the Rings is still one of the best like fantasy stories ever made.
I think the approaching it as a series is probably a good idea. The Amazon series that a friend of my wife's has been living in New Zealand for the last couple years, and now they're all moving to England to finish up that series. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Hooray!
Game of Thrones like ruined. Even the worst thing about that is like HBO's nudity quota for like no reason. Like that for me to be a guy that 30 minutes ago said like this is what I thought about this person in Last Night in Soho, to watch Game of Thrones and be like, if I see another tit again, I'm gonna fucking lose my mind. Like I couldn't stand how much not nudity there was in that show for no fucking reason. Two dudes would have a conversation and there's a naked woman sitting on one of the dudes' lap, and I'm like, get her out of. Why is she there? Why is she not even saying?
I mean, at least in The Sopranos, a lot of the scenes were set in a strip club, so there was a reason for it, you know.
But it's like there's some 75-year-old guy who's like John HBO who's still been doing it this whole time. Who's like, yeah. But there needs to be more tits. There's not enough tits.
I'm sorry.
Be dragons. And
why does he sound like your Stan Lee impression?
No, that
I remember when I invented tits. Before that, the Sue Storm was flat as a board, and I said to Kirby, you got to give her a rack.
Kate, I'm so sorry. I've just. She's
this
like, I'm never coming.
This is the funniest shit I've ever heard all day.
Again, I hate.
No, this is great.
I was like, if I see a naked woman again ever in my life, it'll be too fucking soon. I hope I never do. Like Game of Thrones ruined me.
Got married.
And then I got married. Yeah. But I'm just like, it's nice when it's done for a reason and it services the story, like writing wise. Like those things need to be motivated. And Game of Thrones was just like floor to ceiling, unmotivated, like trauma and nudity. Not that that's what Dune was all about. It wasn't.
Unmotivated trauma.
By the way, I think that maybe it would have woken you up if there was a tit or two in Dune. You know, maybe it would have been.
I don't think so. I think at this point.
Also, like, I totally forgot reading the book, like that she was like the Lady Jessica was not a wife; she was a concubine, and I'm like, what? I forgot about that.
They don't make that clear until like late in the movie, and I was like, oh, okay,
yeah,
okay,
and Jeff.
Also, the fact that Paul doesn't lose in any scene he's in. He's supposed to be the one that like doesn't know anything because Josh Brolin like yells at him that one time that he doesn't know anything, Jon Snow.
Right.
And then every scene he's like in a diplomatic situation, he's just like perfect. And he's just like, here's this brilliant idea. And his father's the king is like, oh yes, my son. He's the shit.
It's why.
I'm just like, can you like lose? You just suck.
That's what I like to call the Dave effect. If you've seen the movie Dave with
Kevin Kline.
Kevin Kline, where you find a guy who looks just like the president named Dave, and he replaces the president. And wouldn't you know, he could solve diplomacy in an instant. Be like, what if we were just nicer to each other? And everyone's like, whoa, Dave's onto something.
Dave got some good shit, Dave.
I liked Dave. I thought it was fun.
I love that movie.
Yeah, all right.
But the idea that a common dude like comes in and apparently everybody in like all of Congress is like, you know what? This dude's onto something. It's like the same for Paul, where it's like this motherfucker doesn't know shit. He's a kid, he doesn't know anything.
Yeah. Well, so I guess what you're saying is that to save themselves from having to watch Dune Chapter 2, people should just skip Dune Chapter 1.
Dune 2. Yeah.
Yeah, just go straight.
Would you say that they should just that the book is worth reading? Just skip the movie and spend the time reading the book, or is that even questionable?
If you're really into fantasy, if you really like the world building, Dune is a must read. If you're a casual fan and you just want to see the results, you don't have to read Dune. But if you were a fan of a diehard fan of Star Wars, I did. if you like anything related to world building or fantasy, anything to do with space or intergalactic stuff, Dune was basically the foundational book of modern, and by modern I mean like post like 50s. It's not Asimov, it's not robots, it's the late 20th century's like space fantasy kind of stock. And if you're interested in how those worlds are created and how much detail is in those worlds, and if you've watched the movie and you see where the detail comes from that they're lifting from, I think it would be an interesting thing for you to read. But if you were a casual fan of just like, no, just like, just touch until I feel something. Yeah. Don't watch it. But like
that's me. I am much more the casual fan. Like as a kid, I was way more into fantasy and stuff. I like a little humor and tongue in cheekness with my sci-fi. So I don't think
there's not a lot of tongue in cheek in there.
Watching this movie, thought to myself, I will never read this fucking book ever.
Yeah. And that's a shame. I feel like fantasy, I don't know if that's the goal or a sub goal of fantasy work. And I'm still questioning that are fantasy visual mediums, are they an advertisement to read the book and to read the content and go further? Like, I know that happened a lot with Witcher, which is one of my favorite things that came out last year and or 2 years ago, I think. It came out in 2019. But I watched the show. I got immediately obsessed with this world of the continent, and I wanted to know more. And I do not play video games. And I started to play the video game. And now I'm a gamer. And then I started reading the books. And now I love the stories.
Wow, that's like...
So is it... And I know a lot of people who, did it forwards with, they read the Harry Potter books and then the movies came out. And I know a lot of my generation who watched the Lord of the Rings series and then read the books. So it's like, do we have an obligation as visual storytellers to advertise the print medium that we based our stories off of, like the Marvel movies do?
Yeah.
Does it make you want to read the comic, or are you okay with just like, no, this is just a bite-sized?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good and effective, that's like a good adaptation. That's good. That's well produced. If it inspires people. I'm one of the very few people who really liked Disney's John Carter.
Oh yeah.
And,
also, to answer Ivan's question, no, the games do not spoil the show.
Oh, gotcha.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even see that on there. Yeah, The Witcher is great, but I was told the game spoil the show. You say it does not. So, yeah, I remember that you liked John Carter, and John Carter was supposed to be a film series.
But, I got really into the Edgar Rice Burroughs books, and he wrote like fucking 12 of them, but I think I read 6 or 7.
It's the same guy who wrote Tarzan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And things like that. Like, I think if a movie or an adapted medium exists, like, it really should service its source material in such a way that it's like faithful to it, but also inspires you to go back and watch it. I've seen 30 minutes of the first episode of Cowboy Bebop, and I'm like, I don't think this is going to make people feel like, ooh, this is really cool, I should go watch the show. Because it's really just trying to be almost like a live action shot for shot remake of the show, which doesn't create that same like, oh, this is a cool world, I want to go see where this originated. It's like, oh, I'll just not watch this and watch where it originated because that's better. Like, or a book, just read the book because that's better.
Right.
I don't need to shit on Cowboy Bebop because I haven't seen enough of it yet. But
it's just what.
But I did like the Lost Session that they put out, that little weird short film that wasn't really a trailer and was more like an advertisement for like, here's the style we're going for. It was like a 3-minute thing that they came out with. And I thought that was really great.
Is that where like the frames were moving and stuff?
And it was where the posts were kind of creating the kind of like, it was very, very cool. And I really enjoyed it.
That was.
And they brought up the soup. They brought up the recurring theme that he always eats soup and noodles. And like, Bishes was brought up a little bit, but like, it was really like a compact thing. And I'm just like, okay, cool. I see where you're going. And for me, it was better than the trailer.
Right.
Because I was like, you get why this was important.
Yeah.
I don't know about shot for shot remakes.
I want to shot for shot remakes. I don't like the Gus Van Sant Psycho is like, why on earth would you have ever made that?
I saw that first,
but
I saw the original Psycho.
Did it affect you viewing the original one?
I know I was a kid, and I remember being like, "What is this?" And it was just like kind of weird, and I didn't understand. I don't know, because it was like old but new, and it was like on TV one day, and then I learned like what it was, and I was like, "Oh, this is based on an old movie." And I watched the original, and I was like, "Oh, this is much better."
It must have been easy to make your day on set because you don't need to get any coverage. You're just like, no, I just need to get these series of shots,
right?
And I don't need your reaction to it because Hitchcock didn't need the character's reaction to it. Let me get a couple of comments in the chat. Our pal Farad Muhammad, the voice of the Bladtcast, our announcer, he says it's not. This is obviously back to Game of Thrones. It's not TV. It's TNA, and he adds the sheer amount of nudity on the Larry Sanders show was shocking but respectful. It was really just the amount of nude Larry Sanders that we got. But look, Shandling insisted upon it. Charles Grodin was excellent on Dave. Why don't you go ahead and find me the example when Charles Grodin was not excellent? And I know Farad, being a fan of talk shows the way you are, that obviously Charles Grodin is legendary, both with Letterman and Carson. And Farad also says, I really enjoyed that last session video. I want to see more of those for movies or TV shows. So as we wind down, we circle back for our theme of thankfulness. And I'm wondering if each of you can think of, we're talking about movies, being thankful for being able to go to the movies. Right. What for each of you, and I'll go first to give each of you a chance to think. What was the experience of seeing a movie in the theater this year where you're like, oh, I'm really glad I saw this in the theater? For me, even though I saw it by myself at a press screening where I was not allowed a +1, but I'm not bitter. I think it surprisingly is Ghostbusters Afterlife. I'm really glad I saw it in a theater because, as I said in our previous episode, I was really not expecting a lot from that. I think that the 2016 Ghostbusters hurt me in a way where I just was not going to open my heart up to the Ghostbusters ever again. And the Ghostbusters Afterlife taught me that I could love again. And I appreciate them for it. No, but I just thought it was great. And it's like, as I've talked about it, it's kind of like a feeling of like the way that movies used to make you feel when you're a kid. And you're like, oh, they kind of don't make movies like that usually anymore. And yes, it's a $1 billion intellectual property that Sony owns. And there's plenty of stuff in there that they're already selling. But that even the cynic in me, it didn't take away from the fact that seeing it in the theater, I think, was much better than if I'd seen it at home. There's other movies where, I feel similarly. I think that some of the visuals in Eternals, but if I had to pick one, Will, apart from the fact that you saw the Suicide Squad with me in the theater and that obviously increased your enjoyment, is there something that comes to mind of like, oh, I'm glad I saw this in the theater as opposed to watching it at home?
Well, I will say that Ghostbusters Afterlife, I was like, but like you've been profusely like so positive about it that now I'm like, oh, I should go see this. So it's riding on your judgment. If I like or dislike this movie, I'm going to blame you or praise you.
Why I like it is a quality that I think you tend to like in movies.
I do. I know. Yeah. It looks cute. I just didn't have any plans to see it in theater. I haven't seen that many movies in theater. I enjoyed the Suicide Squad because I like DC, but I think even though it wasn't like my favorite movie of the year, Last Night in Soho is probably the most enjoyable movie I've seen at the theater post-COVID. Like Godzilla versus Kong, I genuinely was like, I think we can stop destroying buildings. I think we can stop knocking these down. I love Godzilla so much. Like, I'm a huge Godzilla fan, and I genuinely was like, we gotta turn this down.
I actually saw a license plate the other day driving that was Gojira.
Really?
Nice. Yeah, it's awesome.
And In the Heights I saw in the theater because I like musicals and I thought it was cute. But Last Night in Soho was like original. It was like the first thing that I realized I saw in a long time. And I was like, this feels new. I mean, it's an homage, but it feels new. And I'm a big fan of Stephen Price, who's a composer, and he did the music for that movie. And I really like the music. Did. So, and I go right. It's just like it's a good stylized movie.
And finally, Kate, same question, also same caveat. I know that obviously seeing Black Widow in the theater was enjoyable because you saw it with me. So we can turn the page on that. You don't have to say that. They did give us free popcorn. I think it's important to point out.
That was important.
At the El Capitan. Yeah. So
I got a really cool picture. That was awesome.
Oh yeah, you did the hair thing. Yeah.
I did the hair flip, the dumb hair flip. It was great. I felt good about that.
So what for you is the movie that you were like, I'm glad I saw this in the theater as I look back, even though we have another month and the answer will probably become Spider-Man No Way Home. It'll probably be Spider-Man, but.
I mean, I really liked seeing Black Widow in theaters just because I like giving my, attention to that. I also thought that it was an underrated movie. I thought it was really great. I felt very seen in that movie. So that was really great. I forgot I saw The Green Knight in theaters. I'm literally going through my A-list, going to what
nice.
Wait, can we do a 30-second hot take on The Green Knight? Did you like The Green Knight or did you not like it?
I didn't like it. There's been a lot of beautiful movies this year that I feel like they missed what the story was.
I fucking hated that movie so much. It was gorgeous. And I was like,
it was gorgeous and I wanted to kill myself.
Why was the score so loud? Screaming at you every other minute.
It was like, feel this thing because we're not showing it to you.
A24 is like, do you like our machine? Do you like our art movie machine? We're A24. I just fucking hate it.
Will, wasn't that the movie that a lot of your friends were like,
take it from us. It's just like, oh God, these filmmakers
Will, wasn't that was the movie where all your friends were like, oh, come on, why are you judging these movies so harshly? That was the one, right?
That was probably it.
Because I liked Hereditary. I love A24 usually does
great.
They do that screamy score, spooky, eerie, upside down camera stuff. There was a trailer. There was a trailer for a movie about a goat that A24 was doing. The Lamb. Yeah. They came out before The Green Knight. And when The Green Knight was over, I was like, I don't know the difference between that 2.5-minute trailer for a movie about a lamb and a whole fucking movie about the guy from The Last Airbender, because he was in that, as a Green Knight. I was just like, this is the dumbest shit I've ever
seen. The problem with The Green Knight, and I'm going to go on a 30-second thing. The Green Knight is a freaking great legend. It's a freaking great story. And they actually add a chivalric virtue, and it's about honesty. Okay. And so in the original myth, this dude basically goes on a quest and he solves all the puzzles. He's honest throughout the whole thing, except for with the guy when he's just like, I'm not going to give you the kiss.
Oh,
if you get, you take what you give me what I would have had in my house and I'll give you from that whole thing. And that was the lie. And then the Baron ended up being the knight.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So it was like a test of honor. And then he wore the green sash to remind himself of honesty. Mm. And then it actually he came back and he told the story, and then all the knights of the round table wore green to add the chivalric virtue of honesty. In this version, they did none of that, which would have been interesting if they made it the thing of he fails at every turn and then figures it out.
Right.
But I don't think they did that either. I don't think it was successful. I think it was just some dumb down and out, the worst version of what someone would write as a snowflake.
Like a whiny bitch.
A whiny bitch.
Right.
And he goes on this quest and he doesn't learn anything. And then he's just I just don't want to die.
I don't know how King Arthur, when the Green Knight comes in and he's like, if you wound me in this way, I'll wound you back. And then he cuts his fucking head off. How one guy in the room wasn't like, hey man, you didn't have to cut his head off.
You didn't have to do that.
You could have just
just be or have that be a moment of just I'm going to go overkill because I need to prove myself, and then actually do it and then be like, bro, you should not have done that. It was just everything was muted. Everything was at half emotion.
I forgot. You reminded me that I genuinely blacked out of my mind that I saw that movie in the theater this year, because that's how much I fucking hated it.
Well, let me chime in with bad movies from 2021. No, let me just check. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were going to tie it up. But Kate, let me just say that I was convinced that I would never see a worse movie than Mortal Kombat. But then along came Halloween Kills.
Oh yeah.
And I still feel like that is possibly the worst movie I've ever seen when you're taking into consideration, budget and a major studio release. You know what I mean? When you start to factor in, because yes, there's a movie made for like $2,000. Yeah, that's probably the worst movie ever made. But and yes, Farhad Muhammad just says it right. Evil dies tonight. Yeah, a little bit of me died that night when I saw that. But and I'm sorry, Kate, were you going to tidy up your point on Green Knight?
Yeah, and it's going to be a weird one. I think my favorite, this is going to be weird. I'm glad I saw Dune in the theaters. I'm glad I saw Eternals in the theaters. I'm a movie person. I love it. I think my favorite movie I saw in theaters was honestly Space Jam.
Nice.
Wow. Because I saw it in theaters with a bunch of kids, and I normally would never have watched that movie in a theater, but my friend was in it, and so I went to go, and I got a ticket. So I went to go see it.
Wait,
and I'm like,
you're friends with Lola Bunny?
Yes.
Awesome.
She fierce. And she's like, and so I was seeing it in a movie theater with a bunch of kids, and I'm like, oh fuck, I hate kids. It's like, and then I was like, wait, this is actually really charming. Because like LeBron came on, everyone lost their minds because it was a bunch of kids seeing their hero and seeing their hero making mistakes, and then seeing his son exactly like them, the kid that played video games, the kid that like wants to be in his room all day listening to music, and seeing the clash between parent and kid and having them both come together at the end. And it's like, there's a lot of family dynamics, especially in like our present community, where that's true. But to see to feel the laughter and the joy at like shit I wouldn't normally laugh at, I'm like, this is great. Go see
Don Cheadle was a supercomputer in it.
Yeah, he was great. He knew the assignment and he did it. So it's like everyone knew what movie they were in. No one was like nonplussed to be like, oh yeah, this is gonna be the fucking shit, like the best movie ever. Like, no, they're making Space Jam, and I feel better than the original because it had a full story. Yes, the first one is nostalgic and it will always hold a place in my heart. But if you're going to see a kids movie, see it with kids, because you will have that, your heart will come back.
Go ahead, Will.
When I saw the new Ninja Turtles remake, the first one, like after it was over, there was like a kid running around with his like mask on and stuff. And everyone's like, boo, this movie sucks. And I'm like, I think it's pretty special. It clearly does exactly what it did for me when I was 8. Yeah. Like it's the same thing. It's Space Jam. I actually still haven't seen the new one, even though I watched the original countless times.
Watch it.
I think that is really like the best way to see anything. You know what I mean? Like that's a special, unique way. More so being like, oh, I was blown away by Dune and IMAX. Like, okay, but I don't know. That's not
a movie that a crowd is into. I mean, that is a lot of fun. It's like
honestly,
seeing people react to key moments in Endgame and things like that. Those will always stand out. Like seeing Batman versus Superman when when you hear Wonder Woman's theme when she after she's gotten off the plane and she shows up in the end. There are those moments where you're like, oh, I'm glad I was with a bunch of people. But then there's some movies that even if you're in a theater filled with kids and you're in a theater, it's not going to save it. Like Clifford the Big Red Dog that I took my kids to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying it's foolproof, but
yeah, because they like the cartoon. We have some of the books, and that's the mistake of like, I think the best kids movies take into consideration that adults are watching it and you try to not lose them. But then when you have a bunch of jokes that are for the adults that make you uncomfortable because it's like, this is the fourth joke about Clifford the Big Red Dog's big red butthole. And, like, should we take a rectal temperature? There's like 4, and he also pees a lot.
So you did see the butthole cut?
No, I did not see the Clifford the Big Red Dog butthole cut.
Oh,
but I do have to say that Cats was one of my favorite live experiences because you could tell the entire theater had been drinking.
Yes.
And there was definitely a moment where like Mr. Mistopheles comes on, and Will, I'm assuming you've seen this movie because you like musicals.
I do like musicals, but it's why I was like, I don't have any interest in seeing Cats. One I'm going to pass.
I will do a little diatribe on why Cats is better than you think it is, but the musical, not the movie. But there is a moment where it's like the magical Mr. Mistopheles, where he's like trying to like bring a cat back from wherever the fuck she went. And like he just keeps repeating the same line, expecting the same result. And by the end, like the first 2 times he did it, nobody said anything. And then the third time he did it, I heard a voice in the back go, "Do it again." and then 10 more people, "Do it again." And then by the end, the whole theater was like, "Do it again." Like, right?
Yeah,
I definitely hammered. That's for sure.
I did. I never drink at the movies, but I went to Cats with a couple people from AfterBuzz, Zach Wilson and Brianna Phipps, who people from people know her, and Zach I was on the Marvel show with at one point, but we were there specifically to drink, and I mean, people, it was like nobody had any problem with anybody talking back to the screen, and I gave a standing ovation after Taylor Swift's song. Because it was so bad. It's so bad. It's some of the worst casting I've ever seen. But you're right. That as a theater experience was one of the most memorable. That had to tide me over through like not going to the movies for 13 months.
Everyone has to know the assignment when they do this.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Final point from Fried Muhammad: wants to see Dune in IMAX before it goes away. You could do that, but
Charles has the IMAX. I don't know if they're in IMAX anymore.
I don't know if Eternal. Oh yeah, Dune might not be in IMAX anymore. You're right.
Go check.
But Ghostbusters is in IMAX now. So
right.
And the reason I brought up Fraud's comment, though, I was glad to see the Sesame Street documentary in the theater. Now I saw a screener of the Sesame Street documentary, and it was fascinating. There was stuff that I didn't know about it. And I will tell you that there's footage after Mr. Hooper died that I had never seen before. And Big Bird just doesn't understand what it means. And he's like drawing pictures for Mr. Hooper. And there's a line where Big Bird says, it's just footage from the show. And Big Bird's like, well, can I give it to him tomorrow? No, Big Bird, you can't. How about the next day? And I'm just like, fucking bird making me cry while I'm watching this. It was the most gut-wrenching things ever, because I've had to explain death to children, unfortunately, a couple of times.
Yeah.
And it was usually my own kids about family members, not just walking up to strangers at the mall. But anyway, that Sesame Street documentary was great. Another documentary I'm excited for is the I guess it's 6 hours on Disney Plus, the Beatles documentary, and our pal Gene Beretta and I will be talking about that next week once I get the chance to watch it. And everybody who knows Gene knows that Gene from Philly is also Gene, the big Beatles fan from Philly. So we will be talking about that. But that is all the time we have for this week, and then some. We took some extra time. But Kate, we always appreciate you being a part of the many shows that you've been a part of. Yay! And I believe people will see you joining us on Marvel Movie Talk on Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday night. Wednesday morning, Wednesday at 11.
The first 2 episodes of Hawkeye.
Yeah, I'm excited for Hawkeye.
I have not seen, because they didn't send me screeners for that.
So we're going to have the same experience?
Yes.
Christian?
I know. I usually get all the Marvel shows in advance. I got Loki, I got WandaVision. I was like, but just wait till episode 3.
And I'm just like,
no. And then I was not on the list for because Roxy Stryer got a screener. A couple other people I know got screener, but I did not get a screener. And I got other Disney Plus screeners. I got the screeners of something like a documentary about Jacques Cousteau that isn't premiered yet.
Why don't you great about Jacques Cousteau?
I mean, I got nothing against Jacques Cousteau, but I wanted to.
That.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Jacques Cousteau's the shit.
A 3-hour podcast about Jacques Cousteau.
I can't wait. We'll do it. So anyway, we will see you then. But if people want to keep in touch with you, Kate, how do they do that?
They do it this way. I can't do this right. I can't.
Well, we also have audio listeners,
there.
so
They do it by following me on Instagram and TikTok at Cornellable. For those listening, it's CORNELLABLE.
And Will, if anyone wants to wish you a happy Thanksgiving, but also a happy birthday coming up.
Oh yeah.
Where do they do that?
They can do that. She's right. Every time I realize when I do the StreamYard, it's backward. At Will Sterling _. That's where I can be found if they'd like to cancel me for my comments about Thomas and McKenzie. I'm available for cancellation. Anything.
That's pretty good.
Of all the things in 467 episodes of the Bladtcast, that's the thing that gets someone canceled.
Christian, at the end of the day, I'm still a man. Okay,
that's what it comes down to.
Okay,
now you're a man. Man. Yeah, you're a man. And anyway, of course, as always, I can be found at Christian DMZ. Thank you to Farad, Ivan, everyone who was in the chat. And then Ivan Soto asked a very specific question. Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, we will be doing our Hawkeye after show, talking about the first 2 episodes. So that's when you can find it.
Bitches.
But join myself and Gene, the illustrating machine, Gene Beretta, and I talking about the Beatles next time on the Bladtcast.